It's time for another edition of Boy Green Daily. More Jets quarterback drama. Golly, can we just enjoy a season for once? Everything coming in here. The Jets got rid of a guy. They brought a new guy in. Let's get into all of it here on the program.
Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans.
Field Yates, baby. Field gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show.
Come on, people. Connor Rogers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor gosh darn Sycamore, baby, for me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas.
Paul Esden Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. Welcome to Boy Green Daily. We're streaming live on the Heavy on Jets Facebook page to 40,000 New York Jet fans. Thanks, everybody, for joining us this morning. YouTube.com/BoyGreen25 and streaming live on Twitter as well at BoyGreen25. You guys can also follow the podcast in the audio-only version. Wherever you find your podcast, simply search for Boy Green Daily. And I've said this every day of the show this week, that just when you think you've seen everything with the Jets, there's a new day that brings fresh news and content. The Jets always give us plenty to discuss. That's once again the case. Plenty of QB drama. We're going to get into all of it with this man. He's been in the game a long time, a fellow radio guy just like me, Scott Mason. A lot of you guys know him better as Play Like a Jet, the Play Like a Jet podcast, which is also a daily show that's been going on for a very long time. Let's bring him in. Good morning to Scott Mason.
Hey, Paul, I got to say, I thought it was interesting when I got a message from you. I thought at first you might be challenging me to a fight because I used to box.
That's right.
You did the Taekwondo. I know that you've been showing your videos lately of you breaking boards and getting ready to kick some butt. So I thought maybe he's challenging me to a fight, but instead you asked me to come on the show. So happy to be here. Although, listen, if it'll raise money for charity or something, maybe one day we'll do a little exhibition.
I've said that as well. Since all the hoopla has happened, I'm like, you know what? If we can do it all for a good cause, we could get it together. Because I saw a lot of Jets people joking about that, the fight night card of giving everybody together to put all the money towards a good cause. That's always something I'm down with. So I was going to be honest, Scott. I've been looking through your Twitter recently just to see if you've been subtweeting someone, you showing some of those boxing videos, little Rocky, little two. I'm like, oh, there he is, Scott. Okay, let's see who he's talking about, and I could dive into the Twitter world. I've not seen that yet, so maybe you're holding it for a special someone.
It's funny. I try not to get into that stuff just because, I use Twitter just as a way to promote the show and have some fun. Today, I tweeted out something and it got a little bit of attention, and it was just something funny that popped into my head when I saw that the Jets, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, had signed Brett Rypien. I said, at this point, why don't the Jets just do something where each week they sign a different quarterback off somebody's practice squad and start a new guy every week? And that way they could see if maybe one of these guys pans out to be something and, maybe hit on something. If not, whatever, you got nothing to lose at this point. And somebody said, well, what about veterans? What about bringing in RG3 to start one game or bringing in Cam Newton? I'm like, well, I'm open to ideas. Let's just make this fun. Because to be honest, Paul, this has been a rough season, I think, for most Jets fans, devoid of a lot of entertainment outside of the drama, which I don't even know if I would say it's entertaining so much as it's been maddening. And I would welcome at this point, with 5 games left and nothing really for them to play for anymore, I would welcome some comic relief at this point.
That's a unique strategy, Scott, because I've heard it from a draft perspective. We've had people come on our show and say, hey, you should always, take a whack at the whack-a-mole on a year-to-year basis from the draft, because you never know. You should always be developing guys, and whether you hit on someone or you could trade them or what have you. But the Russian roulette, hey, 5 games left, YOLO, who gives a flying hoot? All right, Price is right. Come on down, Johnny. And Johnny's like, yeah, I've been selected to be the Jets quarterback. Hunger Games. I volunteer as tribute. All right. come on down, Fred. And then all of a sudden we got some kind of journey there happening at quarterback. It feels that way, certainly, with what we've had happening here. So we'll break it down into a few layers, Scott. We'll start with this. So everyone knows by now, because we've done obviously a daily show on it every day since the reporting has come out. But Diana Rossini, Zach Rosenblatt, the Athletic, come out and say Zach Wilson was reluctant. And Diana Rossini yesterday provided even more specific details, saying that the Jets have known about this for over a week. When Zach Wilson was approached by the Jets about potentially getting back into the starting quarterback conversation, he showed reluctance then. The Jets apparently told Aaron Rodgers, hey, why don't you go talk to the kid and see if he can rally him and see if he could change his mind. And apparently, according to Diana Rossini, those efforts failed by Aaron Rodgers because Zach Wilson said, no thanks, I'm still good, don't want to go in, thanks, for injury risks, and also because of how the Jets apparently treated him of starter to bench and all this crap. So long story short, all that hoopla, the latest deets that have come out on that, do you buy that reporting? There are some people that take everything the media say as gospel and they're saying it's 100% right. There are the other fake news people who say nothing they say they take for granted, and some people are somewhere in the middle. Where do you stand, Scott?
I guess I'm in the somewhere in the middle camp. I'll put it this way. Yeah. I don't believe for a second that Diana Rossini and Zach Rosenblatt made the story up. Right. I think they legitimately had a person or multiple people most likely telling them something. But I do think if you look at what was reported, this is what happens, right? People sort of read a little too much into it. I think what may have actually happened, and look, we all had fun with this on Twitter. Here's Zach Wilson telling Robert Saleh, whatever. I think what probably happened is maybe Wilson was talking to a teammate or two, or maybe even was talking to somebody in the organization. And he just said in passing, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd even want to play anymore because at this point I got to protect myself from injury, and this team's not going to go anywhere, and I'll be the public face of it. I don't think he marched into Joe Douglas's office or something and was like, look, I'm not playing, or went to Robert Saleh and said, if you ask me to play, I won't play. I don't think that was the reporting, that he was saying, oh, well, if asked, I won't play. What was the old line? If nominated, I will not, if asked, I will not run. If nominated, I will not serve, or yes, I will not serve, whatever it is. I think what probably happened is if they'd gone to him and just said, hey, Zach, we'd like to go back to you, he probably would have just said, sure. I think it was just a thing where he's a young kid who, for obvious reasons, is a little nervous about the possibility of, and again, people will say, but he's a professional athlete. I get it, but you got to remember all the stuff that's gone on with him, the yo-yoing. And they basically told him they were done with him 2 weeks ago, and that more or less his time here was going to be done. And then 2 weeks later, it's like, just kidding. Tim Boyle sucks, and so does Trevor Siemian, so we're going to throw you back in there. It's almost like if you have a job, right? And I hate when people compare regular people jobs to these athletes. It's just not the same thing. Sure. But it'd be like if you had a job and your boss comes to you and was like, look, we're going to lay you off. We brought in somebody to take your job. We want you to basically just stay for 2 weeks, and then as soon as this new guy is up to speed, you're out of here. And then 2 weeks later, they come to you and they're like, actually, we were just kidding. The new guy sucks, so we're going to keep you around. At that point, I get it. Yeah, maybe you need the paycheck or whatever, but you could see where on a human level that would be very bothersome to you. And obviously in a normal situation, this is where being a normal guy as opposed to an athlete is different. Zach Wilson can't just go, oh, well, okay, then that means I'm going to go quit and go to another job. He's not allowed to do that. Right. Whereas if it was a normal person, they could be like, well, screw this job, I'm quitting and going to another company. So I understand why Wilson would feel that way. And like I said, I think the reporting was probably accurate in the sense that it was probably something he had mentioned in passing. Who knows who leaked this? I have my own suspicions. I know a lot of other people do. And as far as what Diana Rossini said, and then people said, oh, well, Aaron Rodgers, why would he have to reach out to Zach Wilson? They see each other every day, which is what Rodgers said today. He didn't deny that he spoke to Zach Wilson about this specific thing. He said he speaks to him on a daily basis. So at some point, maybe Wilson even said to Rodgers, look, I don't know. I mean, I'm a little nervous about this. What do you think? At which point Rodgers said, well, I think if they offer you the opportunity to start again, you should. It may not have been Rodgers calling Wilson or going to Wilson and being like, look, really, I'm on my hands and knees. We need you to play. I think it might just be something as simple as that. So I don't think for a second that Diana Rossini and Zach Rosenblatt, who are both good reporters, made this up. And I just want to throw this out there really quickly. Paul.
Yeah.
People were saying, well, this wouldn't be the first time she made up a story involving Aaron Rodgers. We remember the famous wish list story.
Yes.
Go back, and you and I know this. She didn't make that story up, because what did she say? She said Aaron Rodgers was presented with names that he was asked about whether he'd want to play with them or whatever. And Rodgers said there was no wish list. That's fake reporting from Diana Rossini. All that they did was ask me about certain players. I never submitted a wish list. There was never a wish list. Okay, you're getting caught up in the semantics here. She reported that you were asked about certain players, or there were certain players you said you wanted to play with. She didn't say you submitted a written list or you faxed the list over to One Jets Drive. So I think people get caught up in the semantics here, but I think that's probably what happened. And I don't think anybody should be upset with Zach Wilson for it. I saw a lot of how dare this guy, because I don't think it's something where Robert Saleh, I'm not playing. I think everybody is sort of blowing this out of proportion, just based on everything that's going on. But it has just been a wild time where you would think this would be a time, Paul, where everybody would simmer down, but no, it's just getting crazier.
That's what it seems like. I'm glad you brought up the wish list thing, because again, I feel like sometimes we hone in on little details when the bigger thing is what it was. Again, of course, Aaron Rodgers would be crazy not to have a quote unquote wish list. The Jets would be crazy not to ask him, are there certain players that are potentially available that you'd like to play with? And then we could compare your wish list to our wish list. We have a free agent list of guys. Oh, you like Lazard? We already had Lazard on here from Hackett. Okay, cool. That vibes. Okay, Kaba, sure. What the hell? Okay, OBJ, sure. And all the names on the list were people that they chased. So this made up Diana making up another story. That part doesn't make sense. The thing I will say is insightful, because like I've never worked at The Athletic. I never worked also, who obviously is owned by the New York Times. Diana Rossini was very transparent about what it takes for a story to get published on The Athletic, saying I have to have this many sources and they have to be high level people. They can't be the janitor I talked to. The Athletic would never let me, which is what a lot of people have said, that it was, she talked to some security guard outside who said, yeah, maybe Wilson might have this. And she's like, great, here's my story. Like that, she said it has to be completely vetted out by multiple people. She has to reveal her sources to The Athletic and all this other jazz. So I completely believe the story. And I will say, from an emotional standpoint, when I first heard of this, I was pissed at Zach. I'm like, what in God's green earth? You're a professional quarterback, and because like the way I saw it from the initial reporting, how I thought it happened was Saleh called Zach Wilson to his office and said, hey, you going to go out there? I'm not sure, coach. I would have been like, oh, F you, pal. Of course you're going out there, or get off my team. You're cutting everything. But as we've gotten more context over the days and learning more about all the information, it does seem like there is a truth here in the middle, that it wasn't necessary. Zach venting perhaps about the frustration of his situation with certain teammates, but apparently vented to the wrong ones, who ended up leaking some of this out. So we'll put all that aside for a second. Tim Boyle gets dumped. I'm going to be honest. This is not that I'm, championing myself as some sort of prediction expert. I fully actually anticipated Boyle getting cut, though, because once he got his chance to start for a game and a half, and then it failed, there's just no putting the genie back in the bottle. I don't think you just reshuffle him to like QB3. I feel like, well, this one's over. He's got to be gone. But I just was curious when that was going to happen, and ultimately it is. So your initial reaction to Boyle, the Boyle train, which Rich Cimini compared to Luke Falk, which is a name I'm sure we all want to talk about here in 2023. 2 emergency starts, sucks. See you later. Gets tossed out of the club. We never hear from him again. So the Tim Boyle experience, in and out, as we say. It's official. He's gonzo.
Well, the interesting thing about Luke Falk is I sort of viewed him the way that I viewed Mike White a couple of years ago, in the sense that the difference between Boyle and Falk is I thought Falk was an interesting prospect out of college. I think he was like a 5th round pick. Gase had worked with him in Miami, and Gase liked him and brought him here. And so I thought, all right, at that point, let's see what this kid's got. Maybe there's some upside. The difference is with Boyle, you knew what he was, and you knew that he wasn't any good, and you knew that he was basically a practice squad quarterback who was here, as Dan Hansis said, as a recipient of the Aaron Rodgers Scholarship Fund. So
that's a great line.
That's essentially why he was here. Yeah, I love when I heard that. I actually busted out laughing when I was listening to it. But I think, like you said, once he was fully exposed to the people that didn't know how bad he was,
Yeah.
what was the point of keeping him here anyway? At least with Trevor Siemian, you could say, well, he's got experience. He won some games. He wasn't embarrassing. Tim Boyle was just a really bad quarterback. And the fact that he was the backup all this time was weird. I do find it funny, though. And I said this today. The rationale for Boyle being here was he knows the system and he played for Nate Hackett, right?
Yeah.
Well, who did the Jets just go and get? Brett Rypien, who was brought in because he knows the system and he played for Nate Hackett. Also bad, just like Tim Boyle. If you look at his stats, they're horrendous.
Not good. Yeah.
They're not good. And I said, basically, he's Tim Boyle if Tim Boyle had an uncle who won a Super Bowl MVP. So just reshuffling deck chairs on the Titanic at this point. But yeah, I was surprised, I guess, that it happened so quickly. But once he was exposed, and this goes back, Paul, to what I'd been saying for a while. I had several people, a friend of mine, Keith Durgan, used to scream at me, like literally scream. You're a Wilson apologist. You're this, you're that. I said, no, man, I'm not a Wilson apologist. What I'm telling you is he mostly, and there were a couple of games where he was really bad, but mostly I thought he played like an okay backup, which is not what you want out of him. But considering how bad he was last year, I thought it was an improvement.
Right.
The reason why Saleh kept saying that Wilson gave the team its best chance to win is because if you look at the three guys that he had Wilson, who was an okay backup, who had upside, right? Because he's got superior arm talent and he's got plus mobility.
Yep.
You had Trevor Siemian, who at one time was an okay backup, but I think that time has gone by.
Yeah.
And you have Tim Boyle, who, as I said, is basically a glorified practice squad quarterback. So of those three, the obvious answer is Wilson because he at least gives you a puncher's chance. There's a possibility that you see something like you did at the end of that Giants game where he makes these plays that Boyle and Siemian are simply not capable of making. Now, I understand why they benched Wilson because at a certain point, okay, let's just try anything.
Exactly. Right.
Points. But at the same time, I said, don't expect this to change anything and don't expect it to get better because Wilson's still the best option of the three. And that was the case. And then people can say, well, they should have gotten this guy, they should have gotten that guy. And that's all fine. And we can probably all agree on that. But Saleh can only choose between the guys that are actually here. And of the guys that are actually here, Wilson was the guy that made the most sense. Again, understand the benching because they had to try literally anything. But I knew it wasn't going to work. Most people did. And so they're basically right back where they started 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I do believe it's inevitable. We're going to see all three of these cats at some point before the season is over, either repeat offenders or for the first time. Quickly here on Rypien, who's interesting. This is not the first time the Jets pursued him. They did so in early September after Rodgers goes down. They kicked the tires, but the Rams, blocked the move by promoting him to the 53-man roster. So they didn't get their chance. He gets a start, gets dumped, ends up on the Seattle practice squad, and he's been there. He was there for the last month before getting picked up by the Jets. Is there anything there? The stats say there isn't, but is there anything there beyond that? And I'm not talking about some long-term franchise quarterback. We're all just talking about we're in the mud here. There's 5 games left, and we're just going, all right, how are we getting through this thing? Is there anything from Rypien that would suggest he's any better than Boyle if he gets any ops?
I mean, he might be better than Boyle, but I mean, boy, is that a low bar.
Isn't it? Yeah, that's a good point.
I think from watching him a couple of times, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I did some massive deep dive on his tape. But from what I've seen, nothing really stands out to me. And I think really the reason that they liked him is because he had some experience. And again, he played in the Nate Hackett system, which apparently is a big deal. That's why they had to have Boyle over Siemian. Again, not that it matters one way or the other which of the two is there, but I don't really expect Brett Rypien to show you anything. There's a reason why he's bounced between a whole bunch of teams, and we saw him play for Denver. There was really nothing in particular that would make you think he would be anything. So I'm fine with them bringing him in because who cares, but I'm not expecting anything.
All right, let's end with a couple of these. First off, I normally ask for the prediction for the game upcoming, but I'm going to put that kind of package together with everything else. There are 5 games left for the Jets. They're in the middle of a 5-game losing streak. Last year, unfortunately, they ended on a 6-game losing streak. Is there a win left on the schedule? Because when I look at it, you say, Washington or New England maybe, but you probably could have said that before Vegas, before the Chargers, before this game or that game. You said, "Oh, that's winnable," and then they lose them. We're like, "Well, what's winnable anymore?" So with everything that's going on, what is left here on the schedule with the Jets having only 4 wins at this point? Where are they finishing up?
Well, I'll stipulate by saying that any given Sunday is still up there, because we were just talking about 2020 when the Jets went to the Rams and beat them on the road. This was a playoff Rams team.
Yeah.
And the Jets beat them after being 0-13 to start the season. So anything can happen.
Of course.
That said, I think you identified the 2 teams that are the most likely. Washington at home, with a coach that is basically a dead man walking, and the Patriots on the road with another coach who, I don't know if he's a dead man walking, but seems to be the most vulnerable that I've seen him since the end of his tenure with the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
So, and a really bad team, by the way, in New England. So I don't know. I think it's very possible they don't win any of these games. Jesus. But wouldn't it be the most Jets thing of all time to win that last game against New England, push New England into like the number 2 pick where they end up getting Caleb Williams or Drake May, and then they drop themselves down in the draft order and aren't able to get one of the tackles they want or one of the receivers they want or a good enough deal to trade down or whatever it is? That would be the most Jets thing ever, would be for that to happen. So I think that if you're going to say that there's winnable games left, those would be the 2 on paper.
Yeah.
And New England would be the most winnable. And I think, man, we could all see that script, can't we? That would be what would happen. And then the next 10 years, we complain the same way that we complain about the Jets beating the Rams.
Yes.
And costing them Trevor Lawrence. We would complain about the Jets beating the Patriots and handing Caleb Williams or Drake May to the Patriots as they become a perennial Pro Bowler or something.
Yeah, this is way ahead of our britches here, but would you and this will be a debate point, I'm sure, in a couple weeks, would you take any solace in the Jets ending the streak against the New England Patriots, regardless of circumstance? Obviously, both these teams are obviously not going to be in the playoff mix at that point. So in a relatively meaningless game, but for the sake of this unbelievable, disgusting 15-game winning streak by the Patriots in a row, would you take any solace in the fact if the Jets did beat the Patriots, they finally ended that, to have some positive vibe heading into the offseason for 2024? Does that mean anything?
So a few weeks ago, I think I said something like all I want at this point is for the Jets to end that Patriots streak. Now I've kind of changed my mind, because I thought the Jets were going to win enough games where they'd probably be where they were last year, like somewhere around the 12th to 15th pick. And at that point, it wouldn't really have concerned me that much. But now that if they lose out, they might have a legitimate chance to be in position to have the quarterback sitting there and be able to entice a massive trade up from somebody and use those picks to really rebuild that offense around Aaron Rodgers. Now I would actually be upset if they beat the Patriots. I'm sure that I'd get over it and be like, yay, they broke the streak. But I think the simultaneous screwing themselves out of that potential pick while also pushing the Patriots into a potential franchise quarterback would outweigh breaking that streak.
And I think we both have the same respect for this man, Connor Rogers, who recently said on the Badland Show, another shout out to the great work they're doing over there with Joe Caporoso and company. He said that if the Jets have a top 2 pick, and again, that's technically, I believe either that or they're in a position to take a quarter or one of the top 2 quarterbacks, however that potentially breaks out, that he, Connor Rogers, if he was running the Jets, would absolutely unquestioned take one of those guys and basically F you, Aaron Rodgers. Like, I don't give a flying hoot how you'd feel about it. That's how strongly, apparently, Connor Rogers is convicted about these quarterbacks in this class. Is there any circumstance in which you would entertain that? Because when you were talking about a trade back, which I think a lot of people would be for, obviously, for a lot of reasons, for the bag that would be included in the ability to fill a couple of different holes. But would you at all entertain the dance of the dance that Connor Rogers has put out there in the Badlands universe?
Well, here's what I'll say. First of all, Connor is a great guy, so I'm with you on that. I have nothing but respect for him. One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. That said, and I don't think that this is Connor saying that he thinks this is what the Jets would do. I assume this was just what he would do if he was in that position.
That's what seemed like.
Would I consider doing it? Sure, I would, but here's the situation, and I've talked about this quite a bit on Play Like a Jet. You have a quarterback in Rodgers who A, came here for one last shot to win. B, knows that he's only going to play for another year or two. C, just watched one of the worst offenses we've ever seen over the last bunch of weeks and this entire season. And D, if he were to leave for any reason, so let's say he's like, F this, I'm out of here.
Sure.
That's a $66 million dead cap hit for the Jets. So the Jets can't afford for him to leave for any reason, right? And he's shown that he's temperamental enough to maybe do it.
Yeah.
Now, let's continue with this. If Salah and Douglas are back, which as of now it looks like they probably will, although I guess anything's possible.
Yeah.
They know that their only chance to stay employed is to win immediately with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. So you've got a situation where you could be taking a quarterback that you never get to use, because if Rodgers goes in there and the surrounding cast around him isn't good enough and they don't win, they're gone.
Correct.
And look, we could say whether it's the best long-term move or not, but when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, they have to deal with their own self-preservation. So there's no way they're going to draft a quarterback in that spot. And then let's consider the owner, Woody Johnson, spent the most cash in the NFL this year, right? Aaron Rodgers, they spent months chasing this guy. They built their entire marketing plan around him. They even had him recently calling Jets season ticket holders, trying to get them to renew their tickets, right?
Yeah.
So he also, and to be fair to Woody, let's think about this. And you and I joked about this before we started recording. In the last 12 years, the Jets have picked a quarterback in the top 5 3 times. Twice in the last 5 years, they picked a quarterback in the top 3. They've all busted. They finally got a guy that the owner can sit here and say, I can actually see this team maybe doing something, because this guy is a proven star, a Hall of Famer. And now you're going to say, okay, we went through all this to get Rodgers. You spent all this money. We did all this marketing. We told you about how good this defense is and we can win right now if only we had this quarterback. And now you want me to sign off on a plan to use the only high-level draft asset we have, because they don't have a second-round pick.
Correct. Yeah.
To draft a quarterback to sit behind Aaron Rodgers for 2 years, a plan he would never approve of, Rodgers. And then you want to basically risk alienating him to the point that he may go somewhere. Maybe he decides to retire or whatever. And B, you want to just blow up this plan that you sold me on months ago for another lottery ticket. I just can't see any way that happens. So when I talk about a trade down, I'm talking about this more from what's a realistic possibility, because I look at this and I cannot see any way that the Jets draft a quarterback in the first round, and certainly not that high in the draft. Maybe if they trade down and get extra picks, they draft one later. Like I could see somebody like Jordan Travis, because of the injury and the fact that he'll need time to rehab. You give him a year or two, whatever. Maybe they draft somebody like Michael Pratt from Tulane. If Cam Ward enters the draft, which there's questions whether he will, or I know he entered the transfer portal, but he said he's still considering the draft, somebody like that. But I cannot see a scenario in which the Jets draft a quarterback that high. I think this is what happens. Either they use that pick on a really good or a high caliber prospect offensive player, whether that's a lineman, a receiver, or even Brock Bowers.
Ooh, okay.
Even Brock Bowers, possibly, if they determine that he's a true difference maker. They use it in some sort of deal to get Davante Adams. Now, that may not necessarily mean a straightaway first-round pick trade. It could be, okay, we swap first-rounders with the Raiders, give up a future second, whatever the deal is, but maybe that's a part of a deal for Davante Adams if Adams becomes available, which I'm not sure he will be, or they trade down, pick up a bunch of extra picks, because Brandon Thorne has talked about this. And again, it's early, and this is not the end-all, be-all, but just as a rough guide, Bleacher Report just put out their top 100 draft prospects, and 35 of the top 100, as well as 6 of the top 9, are either pass catchers or offensive linemen. And Brandon Thorne, who I think most people respect, who's an outstanding offensive line guy, has said this is one of the deepest offensive line drafts in a long time. Now, I have to start really digging in on the tape, but some of the stuff I've seen already, I've liked. You've got the guys everyone knows about, Olaf Fashanu from Penn State, Joe Alt from Notre Dame, J.C. Latham from Alabama. You've got Amarius Mims from Georgia. But then you've also got guys like Talis Fuaga from Oregon State and Jordan Morgan from Arizona, Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma, Patrick Paul from Houston, who has some technique issues to clean up, but from a physical freak standpoint could be just an absolute dominant player. And you keep going down the line, and there's a lot of guys that could make a difference right away. And then there's even interior guys too that you can consider if you wanted to maybe swing AVT out to tackle, which not the best idea, but whatever, it's a possibility. And so you look at that and you say, okay, well, if you trade down, maybe you get an offensive tackle, maybe you get 2 offensive tackles, because it's very possible, Paul, that the Jets let Mekhi Becton walk and they need 2 starting offensive tackles. Maybe you get extra picks and you get a tackle or 2 and a really good wide receiver that you could use, because we've seen that outside of Garrett Wilson, this team has nothing there. And who's to say that they're going to be able to get Mike Evans or somebody like that? We don't know. So I'm just saying, like, that's something to consider down the line. But to get back to the original question, if it were me, I would like to think that I would strongly consider it. But I think when you consider everything that's going on in the reality of the situation, I just can't see any way it would happen.
Yeah, I think eloquently put there. I'm in the same camp. I just feel like you can't be 1 foot in one camp, 1 foot in the other. You're either all in or you're all out. And I think it would be, negligent, quite frankly. And I understand what it would mean for the quarterback thing, for you to have Aaron Rodgers and for the offense to be as bad as it was. And for your first pick that you have available in the first 2 rounds, and only pick, is a guy that you hope you're never going to see for the first 2 years. Seems, again, negligent, quite frankly, to be in that category, 100%. So I could,
absolutely, Paul. I'm with you on that. And I think we can talk about what they should do or what you think, what you want them to do, whatever. But they made this bed when they made the Rodgers deal.
Correct.
They decided they were going all in on Rodgers for a year, 2 years, 3 years, however long he was going to play. And now this is what they're going to have to do. They have to live with the decision they made. Whether it's the right decision, we'll find out. But that's the decision they made.
Yeah, last one here before we get you out of here, and it's simply this: if, as you prognosticate, or maybe you haven't, but with 5 games left to go, and let's say the Jets win maybe 1 or maybe none, 1 or none here. So okay, they're at 4-8 right now. That means obviously they'd finish with either a 10-game losing streak or a significant losing streak with a 1 win. Is everybody back in that scenario? Saleh, Douglas, Hackett, is that group back? Or would losing of that magnitude and the embarrassment the offense has already been make Woody go, okay, we're obviously keeping Rodgers for all the dead cap reasons, all these that you talked about, but include Rodgers in the conversation. Say, hey, buddy, it's just too bad. We're just going to have to fire these people and get some new people in, but we're still ultra aggressive. We're still trying to do everything in 2024, but we're just going to have to do it with a different cast of characters. Is that possible to you, or no, they're locked in, they're all coming back?
I think it's most likely they're coming back, but I think it really kind of depends on Rodgers, right?
Of course.
If Rodgers wants these guys back, I think they'll be back.
Okay.
But I also think that what Willie Colon and Bart Scott said on SNY makes a lot of sense to me. You go to Aaron Rodgers at the end of the season and you say, look, what changes can we make that you would be comfortable with? And look, if the Jets want to fire Saleh, but Rodgers doesn't want him gone, it's not going to happen, right? Now, I don't know if that's where the Jets are at, because maybe they're thinking Rodgers wasn't here, so Saleh gets a mulligan or Douglas gets a mulligan or whatever. But I think that the likely scenario, unless Rodgers decides that he's seen something from Saleh that has made him turn, like, for example, what if he thinks, oh, well, he hung my surrogate little brother Zach Wilson out to dry, and now I'm mad at him and I don't want him back. If something like that unexpectedly happens, yeah. But I think unless that happens, they're all probably back, especially Hackett, of course. But I will also say that, as I said to you before, Paul, and this again goes to why I don't think they'll draft a quarterback in the first round. They're going to be under intense pressure to win.
Of course.
And if they don't win with Aaron Rodgers, they are all out of here. So that's what I think is going to happen. I think the most likely scenario, unless something unexpected happens, is that everybody comes back next year. The excuse to the fans will be, well, Rodgers was the plan. He got hurt, blah, 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 threw everything into a tailspin.
Run it back. Hashtag run it back. Oh, yeah.
Run it back. And we believe in these guys, blah, blah, blah. But if they don't get the job done the following year, I think that'll be the end of it. Because, look, Paul, we can say whatever we want, but if the owner's spending the most money in football, they go and get a Hall of Fame quarterback, and you're selling him on how great this defense is and how this team is one quarterback away, and Rodgers comes back and they don't at least make the playoffs. I mean, how do you keep those guys?
You can't.
You can't.
You just
It
can't.
would be impossible.
All right, Scott, before we get you out of here, make sure you give a wonderful plug to the Play Like a Jet podcast, a daily podcast, you crazy bastard, getting all this damn content out. How can people hear it? And quite frankly, give us all the details. And what are they getting when they listen to Play Like a Jet?
Sure. Well, first of all, Paul, I got to say, it's been way too long since we chatted. I know you've been very busy with the baby, and also telling people that you might have to chop their heads off if they continue messing with you online.
That's true.
But I'm glad that we had a chance to do this, and hopefully we can do this more often.
Yes.
I'd love to come back anytime, and I got to have you back on Play Like a Jet soon as well. As far as Play Like a Jet, we do, as you said, 7 days a week. God help me. We're going to start diving in on some of the draft stuff. My buddy Walter Cherpinski of WalterFootball.com is going to start coming on, because I hate to say it, but like, I can do game previews, but at this point, people don't really seem to be that interested in it. They want to know more about the future and the draft and stuff, and we've hit that point of the season. So we'll start talking about the latest and greatest in the draft and how it affects the Jets and different guys that might fit. And each week Walter and his guy Charlie Campbell do mock drafts, so we'll do that. The pregame reports we always talk about the prop bet. We do the last minute news and notes, but we make it fun. We do prop bets. We do picks from around the league. So the idea is, even if you're not super interested in the ins and outs of that week's matchup, we go into the matchup and look at it from a gambling perspective and give you an opportunity to maybe hear some things that might help you make a few bucks on a Sunday. And then throughout the week, we do the post-game report with Andy Vasquez after the game. Andy's always got a fun way with words. Brian Bassett, the OG of Jets podcast, is on once a week with his guys to do. There's always Next Year, where they banter in a funny way. It always makes me laugh. We do midweek news and notes with Nick Faria from AM New York. Been having Chris Mano on recently. Oh, nice. He's really good. Former wide receiver, played at Hofstra. Also a guy who played a little bit for the Chiefs, and he's had some interesting takes as a former wide receiver who played at a high level. Randy Lang, who for years and years and years was a beat reporter for the Bergen Record. Now he's with the Jets. He's going to start coming on more and going inside the numbers. He's one of the best. I've told him many times that, to me, he's exactly what a beat reporter should be, and what he was such a great man. A lot of people don't remember this, Paul, but before there were all these podcasts and everything, all you had was the beat reporters, and you would have to wait in the local paper the next day, whether it was Rich Cimini in Newsday or Randy Lang in the Record or Dave Hutchinson in what would now be NJ.com. And I guess the Star Ledger is what it would have been.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That was what we had, because also the national media didn't really talk about the Jets unless there was a major story going on, like if they had the number one pick in the draft or they signed Neil O'Donnell or something. So, he's coming on. He's going to start coming on more. So we're doing fun content, and we're trying to work around how sad this season has become. Because, Paul, you and I talked about this. The 2017 season wasn't that sad to me because I knew what to expect going in. Mm-hmm. This season, we were all so optimistic. We all were thinking that it was going to be different, that the Jets would at least make the playoffs this year. And then it all came crumbling down 4 plays in. Just sad. But that said, Paul, you've got daily content with great guests. I've got daily content with great guests. And I think it makes a great compliment, because in your case, people can sit at their office, watch your show, or be at home unwinding with a drink after work or something. And in my case, if they're going out to walk their dog, or they're driving to work, or they're on a treadmill at the gym or something, it's perfect for that. So I recommend watching this show, BGD, and or which always makes me think of RVD. Rob.
Yeah,
Van
that's
Dam.
right. There is. We need to. I don't know why I haven't done a cameo with RVD to get that going yet. That's a missed op. That's a missed op.
I'm telling you, you got to do it. BGD and RVD.
Yes.
But I think it goes hand in hand. Boy Green Daily, BGD, and Play Like a Jet. So I'm glad that we're able to do these crossovers and give out what I consider to be really fun and hopefully interesting content.
Yeah, we are blessed to have so many wonderful content creators in the Jets universe. So every time that we can, cross-pollinate, quite frankly, we need to do it more often. It's been far too long, Mr. Mason. But thank you so much for popping on and joining us here on the program. And looking forward to doing this again soon, pal.
Yeah, Paul, like I said, it's my pleasure. And hopefully I can come back soon and have you on Play Like a Jet soon, too.
Yeah, we will do. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And we'll see you tomorrow.